Skull. It keeps turning it back on. Please don't make me have to restart this thing. Please don't make me have to restart this thing. I'm aware. It won't let me switch it. Okay. I don't know. It keeps turning it back on. All right. Perfect. Perfect. All right, so what are we doing? We're doing a little Q&A. You guys have submitted some questions, and I'm here to provide some answers. Now, this is my first time doing this through Patreon, but in theory, there should be a post that's also showing this live, and when I'm done, it should keep the recording there so you guys can watch it as a video. You guys submitted questions, some of you a lot of questions, and I'm going to answer any of those that I possibly can, which should be most of them, I believe. I took like a real quick glance at them, but I didn't do an in-depth reading, so we're going to find out. We're going to find out. But just in case, I don't know if this worked or not, I set it up to go to Legend Seeker, and it also went to Moonskull. I don't know if it only went to Moonskull. So just in case, hello, it's I, Erudi. Welcome. This is our first Q&A here on Patreon, and I am excited to answer these questions for you. All right. Let me pull these up. I had to quick switch because of the channel messing up, so go navigate back to where you guys did your question. Did not show the comments. My page. Oh, here we go. I have to do it from this view. All right. So, starting off, over on Patreon, we've got 4 questions. 3 of them are from a feline named Vajayjay. So, let's start there. First question from a feline named Vajayjay is, who has better hair? Between who? I guess would be my first question. I mean, I guess if it's out of hair, I'm just gonna say me. I have better hair. I have the best hair. Nobody has better hair. My hair is the hairiest of best hairs there is. But if you're out there and you're watching and you have a more thorough answer on what you mean by this, let me know. Derek says, what is a feature you would like to see added to the VTT system you use for running your campaigns? Okay, so it's a bit of a non-related Legend Seeker question, but that is a good question. That's a lot of things that could be very useful in a VTT that aren't available yet. Probably one that I would really enjoy is some way to do fluid elevation and room changes, so that even on a 2D map, when a token moves into a space that's higher than other spaces, it automatically changes the view and perspective of where the tokens are able to see. I also wish there was a way to make singular tokens only be seen by one person. So, for example, if there is some creature stalking the players down the hall and only one of them notices it, I wish there was a way you could make that token visible only to that player, and the others can't see it yet. That would be really cool. That would be really cool. Yeah, those would probably be the two things immediately on the top of my head that I would be interested in. A feline Neva JJ says, "Are there established religions that don't rely upon the praying or worshiping of a god?" Very good question. I have not established any yet, but there are some uh, kind of close to religions. For example, the Saran monks. I don't know if I'd consider what they do a religion or not. But outsiders probably would consider them a religious group. They're not necessarily dedicating themselves to a god per se, but to a way of life and conditioning based on the fact that they do tap into the mana stream so directly, and it's such a risk to them and such high level probabilities of corruption without the proper discipline. They do kind of follow this organizational code, and they're very fervent in their steadfastness in adhering to this code. They preach it much in the way that you would a religious doctrine. So I think that could qualify. But aside from that, I haven't really established anything else. Now, that being said, Frost is working on the companion book, this kind of setting book for Erudia. And I know he has been putting some individual things in these various countries and locations and what have you. And while I don't know of any off the top of my head, he may have established some. Yeah, that stuff we'll have to go over and flesh out. But yeah, I think that's the only one I could think of that I've established. Don't know of any that Frost has, but I've missed the last couple streams, so I'm catching up on what he's been working on over there. And then a feline named JJ says, "Can we expect a tropical tree ent?" You can certainly expect tree ents, and whether they're tropical or not, I think is just a matter of where does that ent live. I don't know if there's going to be different stats for that. Maybe there's some stat varieties we could work on there as well. But certainly you'll have the traditional ent, and for the time being, you can kind of skin that to be in whatever region you want. All right. And then we got a bunch of submissions over on Moonskull. So let me go there. Where did I put it? Feedback and discussion. Oh boy. All right. So we started off right away with 4 from our dearest Queen Shirt Chrysanth, who definitely is not yelling at me in my DMs right now. She says, got 4 of them. "I know it depends on what you're working on, but how much time do you spend writing versus researching?" Oh, that's, yeah. I don't even know how I would scale that out. It very much depends on what I'm doing. If I'm working systems, for example, kind of equal parts both, I would say. Because I do go check out other systems and compare it to what I've done, and there's a lot of math. There's a lot of math in systems. If you've never written one, you're going to find out very quick that everything is probability and percentage, and balancing it out is doing math, which isn't particularly fun. I've never been a big fan of doing math, so ironic that I'm doing this. But also seeing what others did and trying to figure out, well, why didn't they do X, Y, or Z? And this system did X, this system did Y. How did it work out for each one? Or if I come up with a problem as I'm making my system, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how I want to address that. How did other systems address that? I can go look at a couple different systems. So there's a lot of research there. Lore writing, probably do a lot less research, because most of what I write in my lore is creative to me. I don't really base it on other things. Now, the way Frost handles that's going to be slightly differently, because he does write more regional type stuff. And so he does a lot of research on, topography and looking at different regions of the world, what makes an arid climate, things like that I don't really think about so much on my end of it because my lore tends to be more top level, involving individuals, gods, the narrative of a story over time, and less down at the nitty gritty of the actual settings and worlds and structures and things like that. Um, so I do a little bit less there on the lore writing side. Occasionally, though, I do what I call legal researching. So that is where I am trying to find out if something I'm talking about or doing is going to be a problem, because of some bigger companies out there that like to get court happy, as it were. So yeah, there you go. And then she asks, do you tend to work on bullet points and flesh things out later, or just write and go back over things? A little bit of both. Um, I'm also very scattered. I feel like you probably have a conniption if you ever saw my actual uh, how I organize this stuff. Meaning I don't. I've got documents all over the place. Some documents have multiple things in them, and finding them. Some of the stuff I didn't put in documents at all. I literally just wrote them to Frost. Then I have to go search Frost's DMs for the thing that I wrote, and sometimes I can't remember exactly where I put those things. So that's a big. We'll call that a con in the Erudi writing department, but I'm not scattered. I don't know what you mean. But I do both. Yeah, I sometimes will write little outlines and bullet points. I've got a whole outline of like the war and its entire history, the Godkiller War for Frost, and sometimes I outline where I want a story to go, and then I kind of fill it in. Other times I literally just write and see what happens, and sometimes I start in the middle, sometimes I start beginning. It's I don't have an exact process. We'll just say I do what feels good and makes sense, where my creative juices are flowing. Can you go into some of the issues that you've seen as a pro DM that might have influenced some of the mechanics that you've come up with? Yeah, so those are two things that I've really approached with this. Obviously, I want things to be fun for the player. So I'm trying to do things that wow, Chris Ann's mom. Wow. Not scattered at all. I don't know why you're saying that. I try to make it fun for both players and DM. And I try to address things that obviously players have to deal with, but I also try to think of it very strongly from the DM perspective because I have DM'd a lot of stuff. And even as a non-pro DM, there are just things that are like it's things you can't blame the player for that happen, but they're kind of annoying to have to deal with. And so I try to think of ways how can I make that process still fun for the player, but also easier on the DM. For example, druids. Druids are a big one, right? A druid having to make the DM dig up the stats of like multiple creatures every single session, and you never know exactly what they're going to pull up, right? Sometimes they have some they use a lot, and then they'll just randomly pull something out, and you got to go find the stat block and make a sheet for it and assign it to them, give it a token. A lot of times these druids and stuff, they or rangers or whatever, they give special stats in addition to the normal stats. So it's not just a bear; it's a bear that gets X number of extra hit points. So you have to make them their own sheet that's separate from the core sheet, or and then calculate all these extra hit points and bonuses and things like that. So it's it can be very tedious to do that sort of thing. Another one is item crafting. Another thing is when people, try to scavenge an animal and they want to know all of the intricate like anatomy of the thing. Like, are there any glands I could use? Are there any blah, whatever that sort of stuff. Can be tedious and tricky for a DM to figure out, and sometimes, just to be honest, it can be annoying. And so I try to think of that as a DM, how I can make that better. What can I do with this system that'll still make it fun for the players, but make it easier on the DM, which in turn will make it better for the players, because if the DM's having an easy time, and you can get things quickly and fluidly to the players, then they're having a better time because they don't have to wait as long for their stuff. So that's a lot of the way that I look at that. I don't know how much I would say pro DM plays into it per se. because I mean it's just kind of the monetization of providing a service. I don't really touch the system in that sense. But just being a DM in general, yeah, there are certainly. Oh, another one is wound caps. Something that I think is really frustrating as a DM, but also is frustrating for players, in my opinion, is when you, well, not maybe not all players. There are some who are very power gamey and do not care if they one shot the big bad of the whole campaign and there's all the dramas gone. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Is sometimes there are just these situations where a player comes in and just powerhouses. You made this character that's supposed to last like 10 rounds or more, supposed to be really strong, big dramatic conclusion to what's been maybe a year of buildup. Because they power gamed their character so thoroughly and researched everything online and min-maxed it to the max, just like in 4 attacks, bring it down to HP or even 1 HP or kill it or whatever. And so as a DM, you have to like either overpower the thing to a point where it's kind of ludicrous, or whatever. So I built in the system something called a legendary cap, legendary damage cap. So creatures that are iconic, legendary, that things have been building up to, they have a damage cap. They can only take so much damage in a single round, and your goal as a team is to try to meet that cap and get all that damage in. But that allows them to exist longer, and it's explained narratively by, they're iconic for a reason. Maybe they're throwing out several little minor defensive spells. They're really good at dodging, weaving behind rocks, whatever their narrative reason is for being so much trickier to hit and damage than others. That is what their legendary damage cap is. And all right, Chrysanth's final question: why are you having us write these in feedback and discussion when there's an actual Q&A area? Because, Chrysanth, the Q&A area is not for you, and it's not for the readers or the viewers or the supporters. Q&A is an official documentary Q&A section. So that is where common questions go. So if it's something that, one, I need to get out there to let people know, such as how do I connect my Patreon to my Discord, I might put a Q&A there that the question is that, and then provide the answer from. So that is a place they can go to get something official from me. That is not a discussion area. Feedback and discussion is the place where you would talk about the game or ask questions and what have you. That is. And then somebody tagged in Dragonoodle Soup. Thank you for that. Oh my god, Dragonoodle Soup. 5 monumental questions. All right. Let's see if I can tackle any of these. Yeah, his get pretty in-depth. All right, first question. The clay in Clayton was said to retain the energy from the breath weapon used by Grix. However, the breath weapon in question has the property to unmake and destroy things. Doesn't seem likely that anything would be able to retain energy from the attack, because the weapon and any energy rating off of it would likely destroy anything it touches. Moreover, it has been stated that the modern people have lost the ability to create magical items. This is going to be 3 questions, isn't it? And a large running theme of the game is lost technology in the form of magic items. This is at conflict with the idea that the people near Clayton harvest the dangerous material and make magic items from it. There also seems to be a schism in what is considered able to be magical or not. People cannot retain magical energies within their body, but clay can retain magical energies from a god's weapon that would otherwise destroy anything it touches. I'd like a rundown of why certain things retain magic but others don't. Oh my god, that's a lot of... That's like 5 questions just in the first question. Okay. So the breath weapon in particular that you're referring to, obviously we haven't made the in-game mechanics for it yet. Well, I guess maybe that's not obvious to you, but I have not made the breath weapon mechanics for that particular attack yet. But the idea behind it is it's the only thing that can unmake a divine entity. So normally, in the past, if you didn't, it didn't matter what kind of weapon you had. It didn't matter if it was a blade, a magical blade, an energy weapon, some sort of magical spell. You couldn't kill a god. All right, the gods were just unkillable. They were immortal, but beyond being immortal, they were indestructible. They couldn't even kill each other. This sort of allowed them to exist in harmony as well, even when they were at odds. Not much you could do about it. The wars would then be fought with supporters and worshippers and things like that if you had some sort of bigger conflict. There's not much they could do to each other, but they can reduce each other's footprint in the world by getting their followers to go to a head. Grix, however, using his big brain, said, well, surely something created the gods, something must be able to unmake them. And the people that made the gods were the keepers. So if anybody would know how to unmake a god, it would be the keepers. So he devoted his time to trying to find lost keeper technology or some way of contact with the keepers, because the only gods up to this point who had ever talked to a keeper were the 4 original gods. No other god has. So he finds one eventually, according to his story, and he finds the ability to unmake a god, and that's what his breath weapon does. So it's not more or less destructive to anybody else or anything else. It's specifically it's just like any other breath weapon, like a fire one, an electric one, an acid one. The only difference is gods aren't immune to it. So that's what makes it special. Yes, that stuff can be captured in other materials just the same way as lightning could, or radiant energy could, or any other magical power could. But when used, and if you put, for example, lightning in a gem, that lightning in a gem doesn't destroy the gem, it still contains it. Same with the breath weapon. But unique to the breath weapon, that energy that kind of got dispersed after he got imprisoned because the prison couldn't contain all that energy. There are pockets of that energy that are dangerous to mine, but can be infused into weapons and things like that. It has been stated that modern people have lost the ability to create magical items, and a large running theme of the game is lost technology. Yes, kind of both, right? They can make magic items. To make the legendary level of magic items that existed during the God Killer War and prior, there are not many people around, very few, if any, that still have that level of craftsmanship. There are still people that can make magical trinkets. People can make like a common, like +1 magical item sword type thing. And they're considered to be very skilled by modern standards. So very kind of like simple magic items or trinkets or things like that, enchantments and runes, those sort of things, they do exist. But for example, if we compare this to D&D, making something like a Vorpal sword, there's nobody with that skill set anymore, with the exception of a god, right? So Vulcan, for example, could probably still craft those sort of things. But no, we want Legend Seeker to be about seeking. So you're going to be going out and finding these things, uncovering these ancient artifacts, these powerful relics lost to time. And that's what makes it cool, is when you find these wondrous items. I find that having crafting systems where you can just make the greatest items in the games really takes away from their mystery and their grandeur and the specialness of having that item. I think it's kind of lame. And so that's why I'm going that route. So they can definitely infuse these items with that energy in the same way you could infuse lightning to a weapon or whatever, at a very basic level. And then if there are any like high level wizards, like for example, we released an NPC from the Brotherhood, who is deceased, but if he was ever to be returned, or his, maybe one of his assistants or something that he personally trained still existed, that person might actually have enough skill set to know how to make even more powerful items. Also, extraplanar beings and things like that who have these more ancient knowledges, they certainly can make these. But the main thing is, before, the gods had nothing to fear because nothing could hurt them. So now there are these energies out there that can be harnessed, and even if they are just simply applied to a simple dagger, all right, you turn a +1 dagger with this unmaking energy on it, that's a threat to them. Put it in the right hands, somebody of the right level and caliber, or somebody who just has the right opportunity. That's not something they ever had to worry about before. So yeah. So hopefully that helped. And then number 2 from Drag Noodle Soup. I feel like I just did 5. There seems to be other energies outside of what is considered divine magic and arcane magic. There also seems to be entities in relation to those energies that the gods are not in relation to, do not have much information on, and do not have control, authority, jurisdiction over. One of these energies is actually the spark of life that was used to create mortals. It seems that the gods did not create the spark of life, they simply had it. This brings into question the nature of souls of mortals. Are the souls divine in nature, or is there a different energy? If the spark is divine, why is there no god of it? What is the relationship between the mortal soul and the mana stream? Oh my god. That the mana stream causes mortal souls to become insane. If the mortal soul is divine and can be driven insane by the mana stream, would a god in contact with the mana stream also be driven insane? Could a soul have given... Oh man, I'm going to have to structure these Q&As, I think. I'm going to think of how I'm going to do that going forward. If the mortal soul is divine and can be driven insane by the mana stream, would a god in contact with the mana stream also be driven insane? Could a soul, if given time, reach the level of a god via the mana stream? Is a god a soul? Can a mortal soul be destroyed? Is there a difference between the soul of a human and the soul of an elf? If there is no difference between souls and they work like blank slates, what is the driving force that causes such large differences between mortals? Okay, that's a lot of questions. And the big problem with a lot of these is so Legend Seeker's taking the approach of I don't know if show don't tell's the right word. How do I want to phrase that? Basically, not everything has an answer, right? So we don't want to over-explain things. So I'm not going to like down the level of like midichlorian the Jedi, for example. And so that's kind of the same thing here. Things just they work the way they work, and they've always worked that way. And there could be debate about it. There's a lot of religions and different organizations and philosophers and things that talk about these things. They might have their own different theories, like what is the mana stream, for example, and nobody actually knows the answer for that. Do gods have souls? That is actually a question of debate in the universe. So that is not established to the player in any way, shape, or form, or the GM, or the keeper in this case. So in those situations, they probably would leave that as a mystery, something to be explored and pondered, but never directly told to you. And the reason that is one of the matters of debate, it's literally part of one of the storylines. Senna, the goddess of transformation and growth, she was killed by Grix's breath weapon. And when Grix killed her, the question of what happens to a god after death was very prominent. Her followers certainly were pondering this, as were the other gods. Where did she go? She didn't go to the afterlife. She's not with Mordecai in his realms. They have no idea what happens to a god. So those are questions that are present in the universe and aren't necessarily answered. Now, some of these, let's see. What is the difference between divine magic or arcane magic? The source, really, is the main thing. At least as of right now, there's no sort of like damage types associated with this. There's nothing different between arcane or divine. It's just your source. Arcane, you've learned to tap into the mana stream yourself through studies. Divine, you are being provided your abilities and access to the mana stream directly through the gods. So they're kind of being a conduit for you. They're letting you skip all of that study and that stuff, and they're just giving you power. And as you prove yourself, giving you access to more and more power as you pray for more abilities to see their ends. See their ends completed. So there's not really, it doesn't get technical in the way I think that you're asking here for divine magic and arcane magic. There may be some cases where maybe a trap or something or an item cares about whether something's divine magic. I think that would be the most likely case. I don't think most things are going to care if it's arcane magic, but divine magic specifically might have an interaction. The question about entities in relation to the energies that the gods are not in relation to. So yeah, this is more of that we're not answering everything aspect of stuff. You know the keepers exist. You know the keepers created the gods. And the keepers gave the gods their abilities to do things and their resources. So that would include things like the spark of life and the spark of creation. So those things are a resource, and the gods weren't necessarily given a handbook either. The keepers were like, "Hello, child. We've created you. We've put you in your ant farm. Here's your resources. These are yours. Goodbye." and just fucked off. So they fudged off. But yeah, so they just didn't necessarily fix everything in that sense or explain everything. So the gods kind of had to figure it out, and it's a bit of a why are they doing that? The keepers are unknowable, they're ununderstandable. So why do they take this approach? Why aren't they being more hands-on? Why do they make things and just leave? Why didn't they give more instruction? Yeah, I don't know. So it's a mystery. It was a surprise to the gods. They didn't know that they had a finite resource. They thought they could just keep creating things, and then suddenly they weren't able to. That resource ran out, and they were like, "Whoa, hold on! Nobody explained to us that this was a finite resource. Are you serious?" A lot of it's a surprise to them too. So maybe some sort of game or some sort of test or something, some sort of management of their power that the keepers were hoping to get from them. They don't know. Let's see. Okay, so I explained why if the spark is divine, why is there no god of it? And also not everything has a god of it. So that would be another thing too. There are gods that oversee certain things that either the keepers or the gods themselves felt needed some sort of jurisdiction, but there isn't literally a god for everything. But anything that was given to the gods, so the spark of life and things like that, that was provided by the keepers. So I mean, if you wanted to call somebody a god of that, that would probably be the closest. What is the relationship between the mortal soul and the mana stream? If the mortal soul and the mana stream, that the mana stream causes mortal souls to become insane? I'm not sure what you mean there. If you're referring to ghosts becoming insane over time when they don't return to the afterlife, that has nothing to do with the mana stream specifically. If you're talking about corruption, that is a mystery that's not explained in the universe. So the corruption is because, for whatever reason, the mana stream is malevolent. At its heart, at its core, whatever it is, there's something malevolent in the undercurrent of it. And nobody knows why, but when you have too much exposure to it, or you delve too deep into it, allow too much of it into you, you can lose yourself, and the mana stream actually takes control. Now, whether that's just perverting your senses or corrupting or rotting your mind, or if it's actually some sort of entity that's puppeting you, all of that is very unclear. They don't know the science or the whys or the whatever about that. All they know is that when you're overexposed, certainly by direct transmission of using the magic, that you can become corrupted, and then the people who are corrupted are just blatantly evil. There is no gray area there anymore. They become very destructive. Their motives become very dark. They are not good people anymore. Can gods be corrupted? Well, you should ask Grix that question. He is the only god with the designation of true evil, which is a alignment you get from being corrupted. Regular people don't get true evil corruption or alignment. Could a soul, if given time, reach the level of God via the mana stream? At this point in time, there have been no souls that have elevated to god status. It's always been somebody who's alive. Is a god a soul? A god is a god. Do they have a soul? Who knows? Can a mortal soul be destroyed? Yes. Is there a difference between the soul of a human and the soul of an elf? No. If there's no difference between souls and they work like blank slates, what's the driving force that causes such large differences between mortals? Because that's how they were created. So a certain amount of that divine spark went into their creation. Now, how that functions, what is the math of it? Does E equal MC squared on creating a race out of the divine spark? Who knows? The gods certainly don't. They were just making things and putting limits on them and trying to solve problems. And first they made these really long-lived beings, and then they were like, okay, this creates a lot of long-term strife. Let's create some short-term beings to kind of offset that a little bit and put some creativity and urgency in the world. And they started doing stuff in between, and they just they sort of experimented. So that's the driving force, is just how they created them. What's their biology? That's why they live so long. Same here on Earth, right? What are you? What is your function in the universe? That's how long you live. I don't know about this question. Can you guess why I think the Brotherhood of the Gilded Veil is based off me? Oh, that was for Frost anyways. Okay. All right, third question. Do all living things have a soul? That is crazy. Is there somebody at my house? Look like it. Okay. Okay. Do all living things have a soul? Animals and insects also have souls. No, animals and insects do not have souls. If they do, then where do they go when they die? Well, they don't have souls, so they don't. If they don't, why is it important to a mortal to have a soul? It's a good question. This is one of those questions that would, I say, go into that category I mentioned earlier that aren't really answered. It has something probably to do with the process that they use to create people, whatever. But yeah, beings that tend to be of civilization and have higher intellects and be complex and play a part in creating history and serving the gods, things like that, they tend to have souls. Animals don't. What is the science behind that? Well, we don't explain it. If anything, the soul seems to be an affliction rather than a gift, due to the many horrible things that can happen to a person as a byproduct of being given a soul. Sure, you could look at it that way. I mean, that would be true of us here in the real world as well. We're not ants. There's a lot of cool things about not being an ant. We get to do so many really neat things, experience things, create things, shape the universe in a way that an ant never could. But you are of the religious or even cosmic persuasion, there are some prices to that, right? Your soul carries some sort of burden based on your behavior. So that is true here as well. Now, what does it mean to have a corrupted soul? Can a corrupted soul be redeemed or purified? What does this process look like? Is the soul necessary to cast spells? What would happen if you took the soul of a banshee and placed it into the body of a soul forged? All right. So a lot of questions. What does it mean to have a corrupted soul? I don't know that we've talked about corrupted souls yet. Generally, you as a person are corrupted. So maybe that means your soul's corrupted. Maybe it's just you as a being is corrupted. That's not something I've ironed or nailed down in the text per se. But generally, if just accessing the mana stream itself corrupts you. So it's more like being puppeted. Now, I suppose there could be like an evil corruption or a divine corruption or something like that. A hellish corruption, those sort of things. They all mean different things. So it just depends on what element you're talking about. But most of this seems to be focused on what happens with the mana stream when you're questioning. So that is, you're being puppeted by a different force that may not really have anything to do with your soul. Your soul could be trapped inside the body, a prisoner just as much as your mind is, as this force puppets you. The problem is, nobody knows. That is a question that is up for debate. Can a corrupted soul be redeemed or purified? Not so far. That is why atonement in the system is so very important. So as you're playing, you have the ability to spend hero points and do other things to kind of wane off the corruption you've been gaining. So it's important, while you have not been fully corrupted, to take conscious and deliberate acts to atone for that corruption and purify yourself and steel yourself against further influence by the mana stream. Because once you have been corrupted, historically, there's been no going back. Is a soul necessary to cast spells? No, I don't think so. There are constructs that have been programmed with the ability to cast spells. There are animals that instinctually can cast spells out there. So I would say no, it's not necessary to cast spells. However, the beings that most delve into that of their own free will, not just like instinctually or being designed that way, tend to have souls because they're sentient and creative and civilized and curious. What would happen if you took the soul of a banshee and placed it into the body of a soul forged? I don't know that our banshees are going to. Our ghosts definitely have possession. I don't know if a banshee will yet or not. But if it did, it would be the same as any other character who has a body and a soul. It would possess that person and take control of their body. So the soul forged body would be under control of the spirit in question. 4. Is the mana stream one of the keepers? I will neither confirm nor deny that, because the answer is just not established out there for you guys. It is a mystery, and not one that I honestly intend to ever answer. I don't think that I'm ever going to, I'll never say never on anything, but I don't intend to, at least, make that a storyline that eventually gets discovered or something. It is just supposed to be an ever-present greater question of the universe, in the same way that the Force is in Star Wars. Nobody ever truly knows what the Force is. There's no explanation of it, no quest to go find out what it is. There's no lore for, hey, the Force is this. It just exists. And the same is true of the mana stream. There are a lot of philosophies on it. There are a lot of questions. People have their theories. People will wonder. But the answer? Who knows? Dragonal Soup. Are the mythic characters supposed to be modern people or ancient figures? They're not supposed to be either or. It could be a variety of things. And I've got everybody scheduled now, I think. So I need to set those up. With the other channel getting shut down and things getting moved around and stuff, I had a lot to figure out over the last several weeks. I'm sure you can imagine. But I need to set up those calls with you guys. But no, they can be a wide range of things. They're a wide range of things. I wouldn't overthink it for starters. I mean, be excited about it for sure, but I wouldn't overthink it too much. That literally is just going to be a conversation, and it's going to be over the course of months, where we talk about, what kind of character would you envision? We're going to make you an impactful character. It could be anything. It could literally be anything in the grand scheme of things. It could be somebody who was in the war, a historical figure of some kind. It could be somebody who's alive now. They could be some sort of like paladin of some sort of god. They could also just be some traveling merchant with a magical store or something that people encounter throughout their journeys as a player. They could be a noble leader of some city or some kind. The point is, your mythic character is going to be somebody who is important in lore. So when you look at characters for like D&D, for example, Laurel Silverhand, I believe, is the leader of the Harpers. Who's another good example? Oh man, I'm blinking so hard right now on names of characters. Older Ravengard, he's the leader of the Flaming Fist and the Duke of Elturel. Duke of Baldur's Gate. Those are iconic characters. They have an important place in history. The range and power levels. You might be a mythic character, but not necessarily be as the same tier of power as one of the other people who've made one. The point is to make somebody interesting, creative, who does have an impact on the universe and is important in some way. You're not just a shopkeep. I'm not skinning an NPC and naming it after you for your contribution. You're actually getting to work with me to creatively make a character in the universe that has importance. Um, so that will be, yes, that's a good example as well. That is a good example as well. So that's the way to think about it. There's no right or wrong answer. It's gonna be a discussion of, and you might give me a concept, and we might talk about that concept, and it's gonna be kind of a back and forth, right? So it could be that you're like, hey, I want to be a let me make something up. I want to be a ancient artificer from, who's just appeared in the last couple years, and who has a shop of wonders full of these powerful artifacts, blah blah blah. Whatever your character is, this idea that you have, and then I might be like, well, that's a really cool idea. I like where you're going with that. Only problem is, in modern era, that kind of technology and the ability to create it doesn't exist. So it would make more sense if we put you as a character in a prior age, and said that's where you're from historically, and maybe your character has found a way to create the equivalent of like a Jedi holocron, these devices that have your knowledge trapped in them, so when they interact with your NPC, they never actually meet your actual NPC. They're finding all the clues of your character throughout the universe. Like, that's the sort of conversation we would have, going back and forth, just trying to find a way to make what you're envisioning make sense in the universe and make it cool and what have you. Legit question: when will the playable one shot be ready? When it's ready is sort of the general answer I give to all of that. It is contingent on a lot of things. Things pop up, like just recently, yes, and get in the way. Do we meet certain goals that I needed along the way? Like if we had met my goal back in October, I think it was, or September, that I had set, and been able to maintain that goal up to now, I would certainly have had more progress than I currently do. We didn't, unfortunately, meet that goal till the end of December, which is where I originally had hoped to have something playable by MegaCon. That obviously puts me several months behind. And there's lots of pieces to that. I saw someone ask something somewhere, I remember where now, about system lore, or systems versus lore. The lore is easier to, once we've established it, to put it out, and it's also easier to kind of change on the fly as we adjust things. Systems, I'm a little bit more hesitant to put out immediately because there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I don't want to confuse people. So, for example, right now I have a 3-action economy versus a single action economy that you see in some games. Sure, yes, I can announce that right up front, but if I go back and forth during the creative process as we're making stuff, and I'm like, all right, we tested that didn't quite work the way I want. Now I want to go back to single. You know what? I'm still not happy with single. I think I'm going to do a variant of the two and add this to it. I don't want like 4 different pieces of information out there. And then there's people talking about my system in 4 different ways. So that's a lot of the reason that I don't do that until I know something is exactly how we're probably most likely, with about I'd say 85% certainty. That is what we're going to go with. I tend not to put it out there. I'll give a more vague description of how I'm envisioning the system and what we're aiming for creatively. But I usually don't put out the specifics. And if I do, I put them to the Patreon first. And the reason I do that is these are the people who have been supporting, and I want to get their feedback, and they can catch the stuff that I may not have thought of when I was establishing that before I put it out to everybody and then cause the confusion. All that being said, the 2 things that we're focused on right now, at least on my end, I am building out the rules for the monsters and the rules for the classes. And it's hard to do a one-shot without those being ready to play. So a lot of the core stuff is ready, in my opinion, at least as of right now. So things like when you roll the dice, what attributes are being added? How does a character sheet function? What does a turn look like? How many actions does somebody have? What do our armor classes look like? Right now, there's 3. You would have reflex, fortitude, and will. How does HP work? That stuff is already established. It's the nitty gritty now that is the hard part. So I've got the structure in place now. I've got to take these classes and fill them in, and then apply those to those character sheets and standards that we've created and how those are going to interact with those rules. The monsters are going to function differently. They're not exactly the same as how a player character functions. So I'm ironing that aspect out. And then how those two things interact. So it's a lot of complex parts. And that right now is the biggest holdup. I've already got something written up to be the first one-shot scenario. I kind of know what creatures I want to be there. And we're going to make some standard characters with the stuff that we've created that you can play and test out and give us feedback on how the system flows. Making a map will be easy enough. That stuff's the easy part. The hard part is the monster system isn't quite ready yet, and the classes aren't quite finished yet. And sometimes when we change one, it affects the other and vice versa. So it's a difficult process, particularly when you're mostly doing it by yourself. Eventually, I'd like to bring on more people as well. That'll come with growth and support, and as we proceed. Thinks he knows what character he wants. Good. We will definitely talk about that. Is my camera not good? Sorry, I was on a different page trying to read the question. How do I check that? Oh, that's fine. That's fine. It's not that bad. Any other questions you guys might have? Oh, I should also point out, in response to the playable one-shot question, the first people who will get to see that one-shot are going to be the Mythics. So they will have first hands-on with those, with that one-shot when it's ready. And they'll be able to kind of give me that cursory first glance and get hands-on with it, roll some dice, see how it functions, help me catch some things. Then, of course, we'll put that out to the gold members, then silver, then copper, or common, or so that would be mythic. Oh my god, yeah, mythic, rare, uncommon, and common tiers for Patreon. So once we go down that cycle, then we would do the public test. That gives a few cycles of people to give us feedback so that it's truly ready when it gets out there. All right, cool. So that concludes the Q&A that is going on here. I'm going to do a follow-on one that's public and going to be more generic. It's not going to go as into sort of the more intimate stuff that we have in here that you guys have been privy to. But we'll see if there's any other more generic questions about the system or anything like that that people are interested in talking about. But I hope you enjoyed your first Q&A. I'll try to do a few more of these more often so that you guys can get some answers to questions. There have been lots of new lore drops recently. Go check them out, guys. I love feedback, too. The likes are really great. I see a lot of you liking them, and I see the impressions, so you guys are certainly reading them. But feel free to leave commentary, too, particularly if you notice something that doesn't jive with something else I've written, because that'll happen. Sometimes you write yourself into a hole and don't even realize it. And that allows me to deconflict and figure out how I need to iron that out. But also just whether you like it or not. Love to see if you guys enjoy certain lore, don't enjoy certain lore. I take all of that stuff into account. I think that's it. If you guys are Copper Common members, Right now, uncommon and gold tiers do have trial periods if you want to try those periods out and see the other stuff you don't normally get access to, and what you might be missing there. Maybe some of the things that were asked in questions today don't sound familiar to you. That might be because they are behind the other tiers. So if you're curious and want to check that stuff out, consider doing it. Tonight will be Star Wars over on Moonskull. Go check it out. All right. Bye, guys.